Hello and welcome to Rathod Science Academy. Today in this session we are going to see yesterday's and today's current affairs. Okay, so let's get started. And actually before getting started I want to say something. So actually there are nothing much important articles in yesterday's and today's newspaper. So actually what we discussed in earlier class had been repeated. So I'm not going to repeat those articles which are fresh articles, and from our UPSC point of view which is important we are going to discuss here. I don't want to waste your time with this. Okay, now let us see the first article. See the title, what it says. Andhra Pradesh High Court calls for data about seaward debts from 1993. So if you see this image, you can understand that this article is about manual scavenging, right? Okay, the keyword here you have to make a notice. Manual scavenging. So from which subject you can see this, guys? From GS paper 2 under polity and governance. First you have to see this article from polity and governance. And next you have to see this topic from GS paper 1 and 2 from society and social issues point of view. And actually if you want to see the root cause of this manual scavenging, you have to go to history, guys. So from GS paper 1 under history, especially in ancient history from Vedic time onwards, this caste system came into evolution. So because of that only we have this so-called Chaturvarna system, and SC/STs are out of this Chaturvarna system. So that is one important root cause for this manual scavenging. And next you have to see this article from GS paper 4 under ethics also. So let me tell you from which subject point of view what you have to see. So from polity and governance point of view, you have to see about fundamental rights. So there are certain fundamental rights which are violated because only this so-called Dalits are doing this manual scavenging. So first of all, manual scavenging is nothing but the removal of human excreta or any waste through hands. It's called as manual scavenging, and normally Dalits people will be doing this manual scavenging. So because of this, their fundamental rights, they will be getting affected. Okay, and apart from that you have to see this topic from caste based discrimination. So it is one example of caste based discrimination, and you have to collect data regarding the debts of this manual scavenging every year in our country. And from governance point of view, you have to see about what government is doing. Is it taking any steps or measures to control this manual scavenging, measures or steps that you have to see from governance point of view. And even one more important thing that you have to see is, yes, here what are the Supreme Court judgments? Supreme Court judgments regarding this manual scavenging. So what it said and what are the recommendations given by Supreme Court. And whenever if this manual scavenging is going on, like whenever these people, they are entering into the drains for cleaning of drainage, everything, many a times it is not a good work, right? So they will be susceptible to lots of diseases, and it is insanitated, right? And even sometimes whenever the drain is full, they will be going into that and they will be succumbed to death there itself. So because of this, government will be also focusing on rehabilitation and as well as providing of some monetary compensation for the deaths which happened because of this manual scavenging. So that part you have to see. And from history point of view, you have to see about this Chaturvarna system. We have Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Sudras. So out of this people we have so-called Dalits. So Dalits normally will do this manual scavenging, and from this later Vedic period onwards, this Chaturvarna system become very rigid, and now it is based on occupation. So from that time onwards, this caste discrimination started in India. Okay, and here from history you have to see that thing, and from society and social issues you have to see about caste based discrimination. So why this caste based discrimination is happening in our country, what are the reasons behind it, and how many types of caste based discrimination is happening in our country. And next you have to see about what are the measures taken by the government to minimize this caste based discrimination. And next from ethics point of view, you can get a case study. For example, you are a district collector and in your district caste based discrimination is very much prevalent. and many people, especially like recently one report came. In that report it said that huge amount of deaths are also happening because of this manual scavenging. So as a district collector, what are the steps you will be taking to control this deaths based on this, because of this manual scavenging? So what are the options you have? Like that you may also get a question, so you have to be very much careful about that. So if you're thinking in these dimensions, then your work is done, guys. And now let us see this article. So here this title says that AP High Court now saying that we have to get the data of the people who died because of this manual scavenging from 1993. So why now AP government is asking? Because as I said, if any person who died because of this manual scavenging, they will be getting rehabilitation and as well as some monetary compensation from the government. So now government wants to provide this monetary compensation to these people who died because of manual scavenging since 1993. So because of this is the one order which mandated by Andhra Pradesh High Court now. So this is the context. And actually why this initiative came up by this High Court is to ensure the families of the persons who died because of this manual scavenging will be receiving compensation, that too monetary compensation as well as some rehabilitation from the government. Okay, now we have to see about the basics, guys. So if you understand this, it is okay, and now you have to know about your basics. So what is a manual scavenging? So whenever you're writing any answer regarding this kind of definition based questions, you have to know the proper definition. And even data is very important to substantiate your argument in this introduction. So manual scavenging refers to the practice of physically handling and as well as cleaning of human excreta by humans. And it involves manual cleaning of human excreta from insanitary toilets, open drains, pits, and even removal of the dead organisms or dead bodies, etc. And if you see the data, in 2021, India recorded around 58,000 manual scavengers, with women comprising of 75% of them. So in India, how many people are working as this manual scavengers? Around 58,000, and out of this, 75% is women. And here I am saying that caste-based discrimination is happening. So in that also, women are more vulnerable. That means again, gender-based discrimination is happening in this manual scavenging, guys. So whenever you're talking about this gender-based discrimination, then also you can use the same data to show that out of this manual scavengers, 75% are women. And as of July 31st, 2024, 776 districts of the country, 732 districts, they have reported themselves as manual scavenging free. But now, by 2024, around 732 districts in our country is manual scavenging free. And because of this manual scavenging, what happening? It is violating the fundamental rights of people. So which articles? Article 17, which talks about untouchability, and next one is Article 21, talks about right to life with dignity. So these are the two fundamental rights which will be getting affected because of this manual scavenging. And if you see, are there any laws which are focusing on preventing of manual scavenging in India? Yes, we have certain laws. But the problem is no proper implementation of laws. So which are those laws? We have Prohibition of Employment and Manual Scavengers and their Rehabilitation Act of 2013. So what this act will do? So this act will prohibit manual scavenging, including construction of insanitary latrines, and even it is mandating for demolition of those kind of insanitary things, and we have to convert that insanitary latrines into sanitary latrines. Okay, and even that act which also provides for identification and as well as rehabilitation of manual scavengers. So they have to be identified and they have to give the good skill and financial assistance, and we have to provide the alternate employment. Okay, and even we have SC/ST Prevention of Atrocities Act of 1989. So this act which also criminalizes employment of the scheduled caste people in this manual scavenging. So these are the two important acts of our country which is focusing on abolition of manual scavenging. Okay, so here lots of the cases which had been filed in Supreme Court regarding this manual scavenging. So what did Supreme Court say? Supreme Court did give any guidelines? You have to know that. So actually here one important famous case, please make a note of it. Dr. Balram Singh case 2023. So in this case, why it is very, very famous? Because in this case, Supreme Court gave 14 directions. 14 directions to union, states and as well as union territories to completely eradicate manual scavenging. Okay, so what are those things which are given here? So I came up with some recommendations. First one is eradication of manual sewer cleaning. So we have to go for elimination of manual, that is women or men or humans, they should not directly clean this. Okay, and even they said that if anyone dies because of this manual scavenging, they have to get the monetary compensation. It is around 30 lakhs for death. And if there is any disability which happens, means they should get 10 to 20 lakh rupees. And even they have to get employment for the next generation. Okay, if father dies, sons should be getting this alternate employment. And next one here is, yes, they can also provide some contract cancellations and penalties as well. And even NALSA also said to manage compensation disbursements and models. And even government said that we have to come up with a portal so that where the record of the data will be there. So we can ensure the monitoring and as well as transparency of this manual scavenging. And what are the initiatives? So you have to write this, guys. So India came up with a lot of initiatives to curb this manual scavenging. So first one here is Safai Mitra Suraksha Challenge. Next one is Swachhata Abhiyan app, Rashtriya Garima Abhiyan. And next one is National Commission for Safai Karmacharis, Swachhata Udyami Yojana. And next one is recognition of prior learning. And next one is Namaste. It is nothing but National Action for Mechanized Sanitation Ecosystem. And next one is Emergency Response Sanitation Units. So these are some steps taken by the government to control this manual scavenging. Apart from that, government also came up with lots of technological advancements. Instead of using, we are using technology to clean this drainages. So first one here is Bandicoot robot, which is mainly used in state of Kerala. And next one is Endobot and Swasth AI. So it is focusing on the pipelines to detect and mitigate water contamination, wastage, sewer outflows, etc. And next one is Robo Drain System. So we have automated robotic technology for cleaning of this underground sewers now. And this one is, we can also use vacuum trucks. They are very, very powerful pumps to remove the sewage wastage without human entry into that so-and-so drain. So these are the technological advancement. So whenever you are getting any case study, like if you are DC, what you'll do? So you have to incorporate all these points. Like we can use robots, we can use advanced technology, we can use vacuum pumps, okay, like that. And this is about this topic. I hope it is very clear now. And now let us see the next article. Yeah, see this image. What does this image says? There are some water and you can see something which is dirty here. So it is nothing but it is an example of coastal erosion, guys. Coastal erosion or sea erosion. So this topic is nothing but coastal or sea erosion. So from which subject you can see this, guys? From GS paper 3 under environment and ecology. And even from GS paper 1 under geography also you will be seeing about this coastal area. Okay. And here you have to make an addition in your NCERT books or in your geography books. So normally the coastal region of India is 7,516 kilometers, right? So recently our government of India revamped or recalculated this coastline and it said that it is around 11,098 kilometers now. Okay, so you have to add this. Our coastline, our mainland coastline is 11,098 kilometers and you have to see largest coastline is having with the state of Gujarat and second largest is now Tamil Nadu. Earlier it was AP but now it is Tamil Nadu. So see that once. Okay, you have to add it. And here what you have to see is what is this coastal erosion. And next you have to see what are the causes for this coastal erosion. And next one is what is the impact of this erosion. And next you have to see what are the measures can be taken to control this erosion. So you can get a direct means based question from this topic, guys. And now let us see this article clearly. So what is coastal erosion or sea erosion? So it occurs when the sea wears away the land. So as you all know that whenever you're studying about your oceanography, especially ocean, you'll be studying about waves and as well as tides. So waves, whenever they're coming in, they'll hit the beaches or they hit the land. What happens? So they cause something there and they'll be moving back, right? So whenever the sea which wears away the land, it is called as coastal erosion. So coastal erosion is mainly caused by strong waves, okay, which is coming in, which is the hitting the coast. And it is a process, actually coastal erosion is a process by which local sea level rise, strong wave action happens, or else sometimes we can see if there is any tsunami which happened, means what happened? So water will be coming at a very height and they will be hitting in the coast and they will be taking away whatever which is present on that coast towards the water or the sea back, right? So here it is nothing but sometimes coastal flooding also happens. So because of that, the wearing and tearing which happens in this coastal region, that is called as sea erosion or coastal erosion. So what are the causes? The primary important causes waves. Okay. So powerful waves, they can erode the coastline through abrasion, corrosion, and as well as hydraulic action. So you'll be seeing about that topic when you read your landforms formed by waves. Okay, that comes under your geomorphology. Now climatology is going, right? So after this climatology, sir will be dealing with this geomorphology. There you will be studying about what is abrasion, what is this corrosion, what is this hydraulic action. And this one is tide. Tide is nothing but increasing and decreasing the level of water. Especially why these tides happen? Because of gravitational force of moon. Okay, moon and as well as sun. And this one here is sea and wind currents. So they are nothing but ocean currents. So ocean currents are nothing but the movement of water in a specific direction. And we have different types of ocean currents. What are they? Cold currents, warm currents, and surface currents and deep currents. So because of that also, yes, this erosion will happen. And next one is if there are any hard structures, like if there is any port or if there are any big vessels are coming, okay, backwater. So they will also interfere with the natural movement of water and as well as natural movement of especially sand. So because of that also it will leads to erosion there. And next one is whenever we are going for any development projects, so where human is there will be something destroying, right? Destroying happens. So that is also leading to the erosion. And next one here is whenever we are going for expansion of the ports or harbors, then what happen? Again, that will leads to erosion there. So these are the some major causes for this coastal erosion. And what will be the impact, guys? So loss of land will happen and sometimes loss of valuable coastal areas, property and infrastructure which mainly happens. And this one is, it will be obviously having impact on the coastal marine ecosystem. Okay. And next one here is, sometimes it will also leads to the risk of floods. And even whenever the floods happens, what happens? The people will be there in that area, will be there now? No. They will be moving to other areas. That will lead to migration or like displacement of these communities. And what happens whenever the seas or their seas will be having salt water or fresh water? Salt water. So whenever this waves are coming and hitting the coastal area, means what happens? Salt water will be coming to the mainland. That is called as salt water intrusion happens. And next one here is obviously marine and coastal biodiversity will be getting affected. And even the community which are present in this coastal area, who are those community? They are based on fishing, right? So their economy is based on fishing and their livelihood is nothing but fishing. That will be also getting affected. So all these are the some important impacts of this coastal erosion. And now let us see the next article, very important article of the day. Finding the rhythm of a painter's incredible life. An album sheds light on Raja Ravi Verma's ochre. So actually this article is about one important and famous painter who belongs to modern India period. So where you will be studying about these paintings? Yes, so you will be studying about these paintings. Paintings chapter in your art and culture, which comes under your GS paper 1. So in paintings, this will be very interesting, as this chapter will be very interesting. So I will be studying about evolution of paintings. So evolution is nothing but when it was started. Okay, evolution is nothing but when it was started. And till today, how the development is happening from one period to another period. So when these paintings had been started, if you're reading prehistoric period, that is evolution of human from apes to the modern man, at that time itself you studied about how the evolution happened, what changes happened. So whenever one stage to another stage, how the developmental activities also developed in the human, that you'll be reading, right? So in that prehistoric period, you also see that painting started by this early humans, early man. Okay, inside the wall of the cave, they used the natural colors and they used to paint the scenes they do or they see every day, like hunting scenes, dancing scenes, community scenes, everything they had been clearly painted in the walls of the on the walls of these caves. For example, the famous thing that you have to remember is Bhimbetka caves. Okay, so here from that day onwards, after this prehistoric period, IVC came. So in this IVC, so how about these paintings? And later on, which empire came into picture? Mauryans. So in this Mauryans, how this painting changed? And next post-Mauryans, Guptas and Harshavardhanas. After that, in medieval period, during this Delhi Sultanates and during this Mughals, so actually paintings, they reached very, very high during this period of Jahangir. So after that, who was the next emperor? Shah Jahan, right? So during this Shah Jahan, he used very, very high amount of gold and as well as silver. So because of this, whatever the naturalistic way of the paintings was there, that made artificial. Okay, and later on, Aurangzeb came into existence, right? So whenever Aurangzeb came into existence, he was typically opposite to these paintings because he says that already they are present in the nature. Why we have to repaint it? It is against the nature. So like that, because of that Aurangzeb policy against his paintings, so whoever the painters who were present in this court of Mughals, so they started moving to different parts of the country. And that led to the development of regional paintings. And after that, Mughals came, modern period started. So in this modern period, Portuguese, Dutch, French, British, so many of them they ruled, right? So now whoever the painters they emerged was like having the style of both Indian and as well as European style. So one of that person who is having the blend of Indian and as well as Western style here is Raja Ravi Verma. Okay, so this article is talking about modern period paintings. And now even today also painting is having lots of significance. So if you go on this Hyderabad roads, especially on this flyovers, especially lots of the things they had been painted. So if you see them, then you can understand. Especially in this Masab Tank area, I found this interesting paintings which are related to this mudras. So especially in some classical dances like Bharatanatyam, Kuchipudi, there will be hand gestures, Abhay Hasta like that, Padmapani like that. So they had been clearly painted, and even different dance forms like Bharatanatyam, Kuchipudi, Kathakali, Kathak, they had been painted. So even children, if they come or if they see that, then it will be also helpful for knowledge sharing and awareness about the dances. So here you may also get the question regarding evolution of paintings, or else they may ask what is significance of the paintings in today's world. Okay, like that also you'll be getting questions. So there you have to take some relevant examples that you will be seeing every day and you have to substantiate your answer, guys. So now let us see about this Raja Ravi Verma. So actually he was one of the India's most prominent painters, and he was born in year 1848. And actually he got lots of recognition for his painting because he's having the blend of European style in Indian paintings. And actually, if you see what is the importance of this Raja Ravi Verma painting here is, he is having seamless integration of Indian culture motifs with the technical fineness of this European academic art. So he has a fusion of both Indian and as well as European art. And even this person who got an award, okay, called as Kaiser-i-Hind Gold Medal, who gave this? Lord Curzon gave this. Okay, so that was a very much special, that was a very much important event that happened in his life. And if you see the different types of paintings he did, Ravi Verma, he mainly focused on the subjects and styles, including portraits and as well as composition, and even he painted mythological scenes also. And he used to paint very diverse themes, and he's having unique style of painting. Okay, that's it. And see the next article. ISRO second short hot test of semi-cryogenic engine a success. So what is this talking about? It is talking about semi-cryogenic engine. So already in our earlier class we discussed about what is cryogenic, what is the liquid, what is the solid, and what is this semi-cryogenic. Let us once again discuss this topic. So here the keyword of this article is semi-cryogenic engine. So here we have launch vehicles or called as even rockets, right? So in this topic of rockets, how many types of launching vehicles we have? 4 types. First one is launching vehicle. Next one is augmented satellite launch vehicle. First one is satellite launch vehicle. Next one is augmented satellite launch vehicle. Next one is PSLV. Next one is GSLV. Okay, so these two now we are using PSLV and GSLV. So in this PSLV, so fuel is there in 4 chambers. So we have solid, we have liquid, solid and liquid. But in GSLV we have only 3 chambers. So we have solid, liquid, next one is cryogenic. So cryogenic is nothing but we are compressing the fuel or we are storing the fuel at a very, very low temperature. So for which type of launches we will be using this GSLV? For higher orbits. Okay. Yes. So now what happened here is, if you want to use this cryogenic technology, we have to store that so and so fuel at a very low temperature. It is very, very costly. And even we will be having less amount of thrush. Okay. So because of this, we are moving towards now semi-cryogenic. So in the semi-cryogenic, do you know this kerosene, right? So we are using this kerosene as a fuel, and kerosene we can be storing it in a very normal temperature. So because of this, the cost for operation is very less, and even we can carry it very easily, and it is widely available. So these are the advantages. And even if you are using this kerosene, we can also get more thrush. Okay, so those are the advantages of using this kerosene under this semi-cryogenic engine. And recently, India tested for the first time, it was success, and now it tested for second time and it was success. That means we are going to have this semi-cryogenic technology now in this launch vehicles. That's the thing that you have to remember. And this topic is important from your GS paper 3 under science and technology. Okay, now let us see this topic. A semi-cryogenic engine. It is a liquid rocket engine where it uses liquid oxygen as an oxidizer, and the fuel we are using here is kerosene. It is a refined kerosene. And ISRO is now developing a semi-cryogenic engine with a thrust of 2000 kilonewtons to power booster stages for the future heavy lift launch vehicles. If you want to go for heavy lift launch vehicles into this higher Earth orbit, we can use this GSLV with this semi-cryogenic engine now. Okay, so if you see about this semi-cryogenic engine, what are the advantages? So cost effectiveness is very, very high. So we are spending less and we are having more effectiveness. And this one is operation cost will be also very low. So those are the advantages, guys. And we even we can store that fuel at a very ease. Okay. So now let us see the next article. Title says Clean AI. So nowadays we are using this artificial intelligence. It's nothing but a software. So whenever we are using this kind of softwares, already you know that if you are using AI, so what are the work which is done by 10 persons will be done by just one single software, right? That means, do it need more energy or not compared to that of the people? So here, if you do manually, 10 people will be doing that work. So if you are using that AI, only one AI within 1 hour, it can do the work of that 10 people. That means it is requiring more amount of energy. So already now the problem here is, when we are using this energy, from where we are getting this energy from? From thermal energy, right? So because of this thermal energy, there is increasing of carbon dioxide emissions. But now again, if you are using this AI more, means more amount of energy required. That means demand for energy will be increased. So whenever there is demand for energy is increased, if you are going for generating of energy by using this coal or thermal power, again, what happens? What is the negative impact? Increasing of carbon dioxide emissions. Global warming will happen. Climate change will happen, right? So is that good? No. So this article is saying that if you are using AI, we will be having for sure economic benefits. but environmental cost will be increased. So if you want to use this AI efficiently, we have to go for sustainable methods. That's the thing which mainly said. So because of this article is important from your GS paper 3 under economy and as well as from GS paper 3 under environment and ecology. Okay, now let us see this article. So recently one report released, please make a note. IMF International Monetary Fund report, which mainly said that yes, for sure we can get economic benefits of AI, but on another side, there is increased environmental cost. So this dilemma is called as economy versus environment dilemma. You will be studying in your ethics from environmental ethics point of view. So here this article is saying that IMF report reveals that economic gains from AI may outweigh its environmental cost. So because of this, yes, we need to focus on sustainable strategies where we can reduce less amount of carbon dioxide emissions so that we can achieve a target of net zero or carbon neutrality by 2070. So second point that you have to remember here is nations with strong renewable energy initiatives, they can minimize the social and environmental cost. So for example, developed countries, they mainly depend upon these renewable energies, right? So for that countries, it is suitable. It is not suitable for India. And this one here is AI is expected to dramatically increase electricity demand. So even in US also, there will be increased demand of 9% of energy. And next one here is, this article is saying that we have to focus on especially renewable energy. So in data centers where we are using more AI, we have to integrate with solar energy. Okay, and even if possible, we can also connect or we can also generate electricity by using small modular reactors, that is nothing but nuclear energy, so that we can decrease this carbon dioxide emissions. And this one here is, because of this electricity use, AI manufacturing and especially significant water resources can cause waste emissions. Okay, so because of increasing of use of thermal energy, and even water will be used as a coolant, right? So more water is required now. So because of this, sometimes there is a wastage will high. So we have to mitigate this wastage. Okay, and here if you are using the sustainable AI, then only we can achieve our target of net zero by 2070, or else we will be away from this target. And next one here is, India is also aiming to expand its electronics manufacturing sector, and even on another side we have to focus on environmental impact by using this AI. So we have to take both into consideration. So if you are using both into consideration and if you are focusing on sustainability, and obviously we can get more economic gain. That is the thing which mainly said in this article. So these are some important topics that appeared in our today's Hindu newspaper. And thank you so much guys for watching. And if you really like this video, please hit the like button and please do share this video to your friends. And do subscribe to Rathod Science Academy. Don't forget.